This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, February 5th at 7 o'clock. Wondering if we can start the meeting in a good way. I've asked Councillor Back to do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Your Worship. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and the Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much. Getting a little bit of feedback. If everyone could just double check that their volumes are down to 0 on their machines here. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Back. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none. Moved by Councillor Forbes. Is there a seconder? Councillor Back, thank you very much. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Council, we do have one set of meeting minutes. This is from the public hearing on November 21st. Are there any errors or omissions from the minutes as presented? Hearing none, will someone please move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Back. I'll call question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. We reserve a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of every regular meeting of council for input from the public to express areas of concern for them, and they're afforded an opportunity of up to 3 minutes to share their comments with the council. We do start a list ahead of the meeting, and I do have 2 speakers who have signed up at the clerk's office ahead of time. We can usually fit in up to about 10 in that half-an-hour period, and so it sounds like we will definitely have time to come back out and see if anyone else would like to add their name to the list at the end of that time. So the first speaker that I have, Deanne Cote, followed by Nathan Davidovitz. I believe Deanne Cote there. Welcome. Hopefully I've got that right, but welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Wonderful. All right. Good evening, Mayor Little and councillors. My name is Deanne Cote. I'm a resident here in the District of North Vancouver, a mom to a very sassy daughter and a feisty dog. I'm a mountain biker, a trail runner, a dog walker, and occasional hiker. I'm also the executive director of the North Shore Mountain Bike Association, and I'm here on behalf of our staff, our board, our 40 volunteer builders, and 3,200 members of our organization. As some of you may know, we are an organization dedicated to advocating, building, and maintaining the trails here on the North Shore since 1997. We've grown a lot since then, and so has our impact. In 2023, we hosted 117 trail days. We welcomed over 1,500 volunteers to help with trail maintenance, 350 of which were youth from our community. And we logged in over 10,000 volunteer hours caring for the trails and helping restore ecosystems. These volunteers are not all mountain bikers. Many are trail runners or hikers, students from our local schools, as well as scouts, Girl Guides, and Air Cadet groups. The trails that our volunteers work on are not just mountain bike trails. Most of the trails are multi-use. Like Dempsey, St. Mary's, sections of the Baden-Powell, the Griffins, and Bridle Path on Seymour, just to name a few. Our history with the DNV has been long-standing, but in the past 2 years, we have grown and strengthened our relationship with the DNV park staff and have been working collaboratively with key staff members of Stephanie, Nicole, Monica, Brad, and on the ground with the DNV trail crew. We are working proactively with the team by meeting every month to communicate on work completed, upcoming projects, and to share ideas or troubleshoot problems. We've been a major part of the natural area trail strategy process from the beginning, providing input at every opportunity and sharing within our network so the broader community could also provide input. We sincerely hope that the council approves a natural area trail strategy this evening. We align with all of the recommended actions that have been put forward, and more specifically, the Seymour Area Trails Plan. A plan for the DNV managed lands on Seymour is long overdue, and the status quo is not benefiting anyone in the area. Continuing to not manage that area will only lead to ongoing conflict between trail users and homeowners along the Indian River Drive and Sunshine Falls Lane, and we would much rather be part of that solution. So thank you for your time this evening. We look forward to continuing to work alongside the DNB to improve trail access and experience for all trail users. Thank you.
Thank you
10
very much
seconds
for
to
your
go.
comments.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you.
The next speaker I have is Nathan Davidovitz, also joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk about the TransLink 10-year plan. And I published an alternative to that plan. And it's something that should be discussed at your workshop meeting or whichever committees that you might have, because it will have, it affects your own transportation plan of the district, no council, as far as I know, has approved TransLink plan. They're asking for billions of dollars from the federal and provincial government, and they don't have the backing of any council. I'll just read you about 8 items from my alternative plan that apply to the North Shore. On-demand transit in many neighborhoods, many more express buses connecting to the Seabus from Lynn Valley, Upper Lonsdale, Capilano, and also express buses to Capilano University and so forth. An equitable fare system. Seabus travel will be only one zone at all times. Return of the BC Rail service that was discontinued 20 years ago and extending it from Lonsdale Quay over a new bridge, and then you can extend that to BCIT, to Metrotown, to the PNE, and even to downtown Vancouver. You have to increase the present bus and handed out service, more frequent and reliable service, providing 24/7 service over the bridges, more passenger amenities, sidewalk lighting, shelters and benches, proper network of active transportation, and possible water transit, expanding the Seabus, having something from Deep Cove to Belcara, and maybe even Deep Cove to downtown. So there's many possibilities, and some of these projects have been discussed before, but TransLink doesn't seem to care much about the North Shore that had transit service for over 120 years. They seem to be more interested in other cities. And so that's my comment, and hopefully you'll try to discuss that item. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Nathan Davidovitz. Would anybody else like to address council in the public input period? Okay, I see 2 virtual speakers. I've got Hazen Colbert and Corey Cost. We can move them over as panelists. And I should just remind everybody that we do have some items that are under closed for consideration tonight, so we cannot speak about the items for East 12th because it is returning from a public hearing. I still see them over as attendee, or see Mr. Colbert as an attendee. Is there a way to move him over as a panelist? Okay. Okay, I'll check. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me?
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. It'd be great if you could just speak a little bit louder. That would be helpful, but welcome. You have 3 minutes to address.
You're the first person. You're the first person in my life that said you need to speak louder. Yeah, I mean, you guys all know me. I only want to say that I had some difficulty signing into this meeting tonight. I had to go through several different leaps, etc. And this is the same issue that I've had way back, going back to 2020. And I think some changes need to be made. So what I'm saying is, I think there's only, if anybody wants to speak virtually, they should only have to click once, not go through several different iterations. But this is a technical issue, right? And I am well aware that my computer, because I use it for my computers, by the way, because I use it for business, there are certain security things that are, what's the word for it? They're there, okay? So perhaps there's some, conflict. The previous speaker, and I actually 100% agree with the previous speaker, but I want to say to all of the council, and I think most of you, if not all of you, know my background, which is I was born and raised in Ottawa. And I have still a number of contacts in Ottawa. And so what I want to say to you guys is this. There is no possibility of you guys, not just in the DNB, but in the Lower Mainland, getting any money from Ottawa to expand TransLink as long as we have 22 municipalities, which is, 21 municipalities, one electoral district, and one First Nation comprising the Lower Mainland. Ottawa has no interest in trying to negotiate with a provincial jurisdiction where there are 23 decision makers. Okay? I'm saying this from my own experience living there, working there, and still working with, and it's true, I am still working with people there. Until the Lower Mainland is amalgamated into one municipality, you're not getting any money from Ottawa. And I know none of the existing municipalities want to do that because all of you councillors will lose their jobs. But the reality is this, you got to amalgamate regionally. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for your comments, Hazen Colbert. The next speaker I have is Corey Cost. Corey Cost, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Clearly, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Well, I only need about a minute. This evening, you'll be looking at the financial plan again and giving it first reading, I understand. I have some concerns just reviewing the material on public input. That there doesn't seem to be any remarks in there which resulted from the Zoom session that we had with the district, with the NVCAN members on this 7 p.m. January the 17th meeting with Rick Danlock. And I wonder if that really is missing, and as far as I know, it's not there. Can it be published as an addendum at some time? I think we made some valuable suggestions and comments that should be part of the record, just like every other public input was. So thank you very much for listening to me, and
Good.
I'll await the discussion of that agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Corey Cost. We still have a little bit of time. Would anybody else like to address the council meeting? Yes, Lane. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council. If you could start with your name, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you. My name is Lane North. I'm a resident in the city since I was since my entire life. Just a quick note, I noted that in our agenda, you were considering asking the province to look at online voting in the next election. I believe that if you were to take that route, there are a couple of things that would be worth consideration. The first is that online elections, while they do allow for more people to participate more easily, are more prone to hacking essentially by third parties. Even in the federal election, China viewed Canada as a high priority target. I think most people would not assume foreign countries to be interested in municipal elections. That is not necessarily the case, even in municipalities like Vancouver, North Vancouver. These agencies have a lot of resources that they can deploy to influence elections, even slightly, to try and get preferred candidates in, unpreferred candidates out. It would be in the interest of everyone, I think, to make sure that a secure solution is found before implementing one, just to meet a electoral deadline in that case. The second point to be made there, I think, is that in the same way that this would hopefully improve voter turnout by making the election more visible, more easy to participate in, the cities, including our city, have a number of consultation processes that are actually a bit more invisible than those elections. And if we were to pursue the route of online participation, it would make sense to make those also more easy to participate in online. As an example, a citizen could log in to the city, to a city website in a manner that, proves that they do live and as the primary residence, they live in the city essentially, so that they could participate in those consultations on a rolling basis where they know that there are consultations coming up that are open. They don't have to be checking the city constantly for different notices about different processes, showing up to different events in person. I think that would maybe make even a larger difference in improving general participation in our democratic processes than an online election at this point. And I think that's about all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Lane North. Okay, Council, I'm going to move on with the regular part of the agenda at this point. So just to be clear, we did have a couple of release of closed meeting decisions that are noted, or 3 that are noted in the agenda package. And those are there for your information. But moving on to item 8, which is section 8, which is the reports from council or staff. The first item up for consideration tonight is item 8.1. This item is returning from a public hearing, and it is up for council's discussion for, to be clear, 3rd reading for one portion and 2nd and 3rd reading for the other portion that's outlined in the agenda at this point. I'm prepared to move the motion. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. And I did just want to, I know I'm going to run out of time on this. Obviously, there was a lot of feedback that we heard from the community. It was a long process that we had, actually record setting as far as we can tell in terms of input. I want to start by commenting on the disclosure. So the District of North Vancouver was not compelled to hold the public process on in regards to who the operator was. The district was compelled to have a public hearing process on what the uses, like how the building would be designed, but not necessarily the operator. And we made the decision that we wanted to identify the operator to make sure that the public was aware of what would be going on at this facility. It would have seemed fairly disingenuous to have the discussion entirely about just the shell of the building, and then at a later time, and this does occur in camera, a leasing process would take place, and then the community would have just been informed about what was going to go in there. And we didn't feel that that was fair for the community. Thought it was better to proactively disclose so that the community was informed in order to be able to go through the public process. I think that was the right decision, even though I know a lot of people look at 5 nights of public input and have expressed concern about it. I think it's really important for us to value public input and public feedback, and that was the way to get the best informed consent. So I'm glad we took that route. When I look at difficult decisions in our community, I start typically by first, by how I describe our community. I view our community as being a safe, clean, and compassionate community with a close connection to nature. I think that generally sums up the main things we talk about here when we're talking about how we want our community to be viewed. And there's no question that from time to time, you're going to have issues that come up that put those priorities in conflict with each other. And it was clear as we went through this process that there was going to be a conflict we couldn't overcome on the issue of community safety versus being compassionate in the community. And so then it's up to the council to then go and dig into that and further consider the appropriateness for our community. When I considered that, when you have a project that has some hazards or negative aspects potentially to it, my view is that you need to answer 3 questions. Is it needed? Does the location support it, suit it? And what can you do to mitigate the negative impacts potentially in the community? And I use that rubric on all kinds of things, industrial properties, different interaction between different uses and neighboring properties. And so as I was looking through this question, I think there was no doubt in my mind that this is needed within our system. We don't have enough of either of the types of housings that are services that are contemplated in either of the proposals, that being both the supportive housing piece or the complex care piece in this facility. And it's something that we can't always rely on Vancouver to provide in the downtown east side. It's something that's important for the whole region to come along and say, we have a hand in this and we have to respond and work with other parties to provide these capabilities within our community. And the question was one about whether the location made sense. And I know a number of people have identified concerns about proximity to daycare, proximity to all of these other pieces. I got to tell you, in the district of North Vancouver, we've been so busy producing daycare because it's so demanded in our neighborhood, that if you had a geographic restriction around daycares, we'd never be able to produce the kinds of things that our community needs. And so that always has to have a measure of judgment attached to it. I'll take my remaining 2 minutes if I may. The location has good access to transit. It's been identified by the partner as being suitable for their needs. And while I have to concede that the location is not perfect, I still think that it is largely a sensible location and that it is something that we can support as a community in that area. And the last question being, can the negative aspects be mitigated? As we went through the public hearing process, I have to say one of the challenges was me being the content cop, as it were, sitting here in this chair and deciding whether to correct that or correct that or correct that. But I think the impression that people were left with if they went through the public hearing process was that this is highly risky housing. And the reality is this is not unprogrammed SROs like you would find in other places. This has a tremendous amount of operational support to help people in need in the housing, and both for the critical care component and for the supportive housing piece. And so in that regard, I actually commend the provincial government for adequately resourcing the program. If the resources are not managed in the right way, then I think we have a role to go back and sit down with them and try and find solutions to the challenges that may come up in this space. I do think that a building that is designed to suit this purpose is going to be far more effective than where a lot of our supportive housing is being placed out of pure necessity. And you can use the design of the building in order to mitigate quite a bit of risk. I will commit as the chair of the police board to making sure that our policing resources are applied to make sure that we're managing impacts and risk in that area very vigorously. But at the same time, I want to see people succeed in that space. I want to give them space to succeed, but we're going to have to respond to make sure that there isn't negative impacts into the trails, into the neighboring areas, negative impacts that already exist in our community in so many other places throughout. But you have my commitment from the police board to engage in that. So ultimately, though, I come down on the side of supporting this project in our community. I think in the end, it's going to be a project that we can be proud of, and I look forward to this progressing further. Councillor Hanson, you're the seconder on the matter. Your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to second this motion. I will be voting in favor of the proposed rezoning. I'd like to commence by thanking everyone involved in bringing the project to this stage. like to thank our staff, our partners, BC Housing and Coastal Health. I'd also, and very importantly, I'd like to thank everyone who provided input for and against this project. I've listened to all the speakers over 5 evenings of public hearing. And I thank everyone who came out and spoke and who, by doing so, demonstrated their commitment to our community through their comments and by letting their views be known. I'd also like to thank all of my council colleagues for their diligence, participating in the whole process, and all of the many excellent questions, which the answers to which I've studied with care in forming my deliberations. I'll acknowledge at the outset that there are competing views on this proposal. I understand those competing views. This issue even divides my family. Indeed, it even divides my household. There are many good arguments for and against, and I acknowledge that the project is not perfect. Personally, I would like to see the issue of homelessness declared to be an issue of provincial emergency. And personally, I would favor strategies that are more scalable, strategies that would allow more people to be helped. However, in the end, we need to vote on this project and take a stand on helping these people who will benefit from this project. During the hearings, we heard many criticisms of the project, its location, its anticipated impact on the neighborhood. But we also heard about people who will be helped. We heard from and about persons whose lives have been saved by such services and facilities. Along with the opponents of the project, we heard many supporters. We heard from public health and medical officials that this facility in our community will assist to address those suffering from homelessness and the risk of homelessness. That the proposal can and indeed will save lives and restore dignity to persons who are most vulnerable, persons who have been dealt the worst hand in life, persons who have suffered injuries, illnesses, multiple bad breaks. And I believe, and perhaps this underscores the vote that I will be making on this proposal, I believe that any of us could be in their shoes had our lives taken a different direction. And these people who need our help, they already live in our community. They already live in our parks, in our forests, under our causeways. On what we have heard, this project will give these souls who already live amongst us 65 places to live, and 5 persons will be given complex care that may allow them to recover, as we have heard is possible, and live productive lives. I do not know how many persons will be saved by this project, but I would posit as a point of analysis, what if it were only one person? What if by us voting in favor of this proposal, only one soul is spared from death, from addiction, due to the services that we can provide through this project? We have heard from experts that the outcomes for these people will be better when they have a place to live, medical and addiction support, when they have our hand of friendship as a community in addressing the challenges they face. I'll continue with my 2 minutes. I believe that in fact, we will save many more than the one person that I have referenced. But even if it is just one life that we save, in my view, that would justify my vote, and I'll go further. If in fact it is one life that we save, that will justify every hour that I have spent in my political journey, because that life that we can save by this facility, and it will be more than one, is obviously of much more importance than my time in reaching this place. So as much as I can respect and thank all of the points of view that I've heard, this is how I will be viewing the matter. We have an urgent need that must be met, and this project is a step, and I would personally like to see many more and bigger steps towards addressing this urgent need. So again, I thank everyone involved. I thank everyone for their comments. And for my part, I hope that this project comes to fruition quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Firstly, I'd like to express my deep appreciation as well for everyone who has been part of this process, who I've had the opportunity to engage with over the last several months over this supportive housing project. With an open mind, I've met individually with residents and businesses, and along with all of my colleagues around this table, listened carefully to all the speakers that we heard over 5 nights of the public hearing in the lead up to tonight's decision. In this role as a councillor serving the District of North Vancouver, I learned fairly early on that the outcome of the many difficult decisions that we are elected to make will not always satisfy everyone, and that compromises are not always possible. I also know that we are here to make decisions that address both today's needs and future needs, and we are here to be a voice for everyone, including the most vulnerable residents of our community and those whose voices we may not be hearing from. My decision to support the advancement of this supportive housing project is based on my strong belief that as a community, we have an obligation to help those who are less fortunate than us, whether it be due to income, health, systemic, or personal reasons, and that being a compassionate community goes beyond mere coexistence and involves a genuine commitment to understanding and alleviating the suffering of others. We know that in the District of North Vancouver, the number of people experiencing homelessness is increasing, and the number of people in desperate need for this type of supportive housing far outstrips the supply that's available. By supporting this project, I believe we are addressing the issue of homelessness at its core. Supportive housing is more than a roof over someone's head. It's a lifeline for those experiencing homelessness who are already, as my colleague has pointed out, living in our community, in tents, on the streets, or in vehicles. By providing stable shelter and comprehensive services, we break the cycle of homelessness and we empower individuals to rebuild their lives. Now, putting together any project, especially a project like this, involves a lot of pieces. The biggest ones being the land, the capital funding, and the operating funding. And in this case, we have all 3 of those in a location that perhaps not perfect, isn't perfect. It does provide residents with transit and access to services. And if this project is not built here, then I would ask where? If it's not built now, then I would ask when? I think anyone who does not support this project will also recognize that not building it will lead to continued harm. We are literally talking about people's lives. Now, I want to acknowledge that I have certainly heard all of the concerns that were brought up in my meetings and in all of those nights of public hearing by those who are opposed to this project, including the general concerns around safety and the potential for increased crime that a project like this may bring to this part of the community. Now, while evidence from well-managed projects indicates otherwise, that shouldn't diminish the concerns or fear that anyone is feeling. We all deserve to feel safe in our neighborhoods. We also heard that everyone involved in this project is committed to being good neighbors, just like I hope those living in the area will be in welcoming these new residents to be part of the community as well. As we make this decision tonight, let's remember what was reminded by a number of the speakers throughout the public hearings, that Canada is a signatory of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and housing is a human right. And by ensuring housing for all, we uphold human dignity and equality. This isn't just about shelter, it's about creating a just and compassionate society. And I will conclude with the words of Nelson Mandela, who said that compassion is the currency of a caring community. And we enrich our communities by ensuring that everyone, regardless of their circumstances, has a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Back. Council looking for any additional speakers on the matter? Councillor Pope, your comments, please.
Thank you very much. First, a note of appreciation for the tremendous effort that planning staff have put into this project. I know that it hasn't been easy work, and I very much appreciate you answering all my questions and all the questions that have come forward from the public. Supportive housing is urgently needed, and on that, everyone seems to agree. We have a growing population of unhoused people, and the housing crisis will make it worse before it gets better. Doing nothing about the homeless is not a humanitarian or sustainable solution. Now, I have listened to everyone who spoke during the public hearings. I must note that I wasn't here January 15th due to a family emergency, but I did listen to the video. I have heard the concerns from neighbors. I've read hundreds of emails and petitions and had many conversations and meetings about this project. I want to acknowledge that many who have spoken against the project are compassionate people who care about the less fortunate in our community. Now, we know that providing safe, permanent homes for the unhoused saves lives. When people have a home and not just a shelter, like the Lookout or the Travelodge, they stabilize because their basic needs are met, and that gives them a chance for a better outcome, employment, recovery, and sometimes rehab. We know this because of the successful outcomes of dozens of supportive housing projects the City of Vancouver has built. Now, many have made comparisons to the Travelodge, which has gaslit fear and speculation about increased crime and open drug use. My research, including several visits to the Travelodge, has satisfied me that there is no comparison to the Keith Road project. The Travelodge was not purpose-built, never intended to be long-term viable housing options for the homeless, and doesn't have any of the wraparound supports and checks and balances being proposed at Keith. As some of you may know, I held a little fundraiser for the folks at the Travelodge before Christmas to give the 50 or so tenants warm winter clothing, toiletries, and food. I knocked on every single door there, along with my teenage daughter. Not once did we feel unsafe. We heard from one of them at the public hearing. 60-year-old Deborah Buxton grew up in Deep Cove, was living in a car in North Van before she was given shelter at the Travelodge. She's an educated woman, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs. She now lives in fear that when that building is torn down to build condos, she will have nowhere to go. As others have pointed out, vulnerable people are already living among us in our community, in the parks, on friends' couches, in RVs, and sadly, even living rough in the parks. I can tell you that in the community I live, there are people who need complex care. There are substance users and a variety of other people with challenges. Honestly, there was even a pedophile at one time before he was thrown back in jail. But my neighborhood is also filled with young families, with children running around, seniors who have lived there for decades. And it's a compassionate community filled with love, like so many others in the District of North Vancouver. I'll take my other 2 minutes. The point is, the unhoused and people needing complex care should be no more feared than those who already live beside us and around us in our community. I want to quickly address the safety issue and mitigation of neighbors' concerns. I spoke with Luma. I understand each resident will be selected from those homeless who live on the North Shore. They'll be carefully vetted for their fit for this building, and I've been assured that a candidate with a violent history would be red flagged and rejected for residency. I'm reassured by the province's recent announcement that supportive housing will not have to adhere to all the policies of the Residential Tenancy Act, so that operators of supportive housing buildings will now be allowed to conduct wellness checks and manage visitors who are coming and going. And that means greater safety inside and outside and surrounding the building. Vancouver Coastal Health has stated that rehab will be available for any resident who is willing. It won't be on site, and there will likely be a waiting list, but I hope that the province is considering greater future funding of rehab to reduce the waiting lists. If the project is successful in moving forward tonight and to make us all more accountable, I would like to see some monitoring put in place. This could be in the form of regular monthly reports to council by the RCMP, or a community group that engages with the operator regularly. and provides council with regular feedback. I feel confident that everyone involved in this project, the provincial government, BC Housing, Vancouver Coastal Health, LUMA, the staff here, and this council want this project to be successful. So I will be supporting both recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I wanted to thank the community for coming out to the 5 or 6 public hearings that we had in regards to this issue. And I say that because there may not be other opportunities in the future based on recent provincial changes to legislation. This kind of opportunity under this format, in many cases, for the change of land use has been changed by the provincial government. I think that that's a far overreach of local government, and I'm proud of the work that local governments have done in the region, the province, over the years. We're a respected level of government duly elected by the residents. And I encourage you to reach out to your MLAs and share your thoughts in that regard. I've spent 35 years and 28 of them in this seat, not always this side, but in this chamber, rooting for the underdog. I have voted against every market development that displaced residents in the District of North Vancouver. And there were many of them. 70 families were the big group up in Lynn Valley that were displaced because of a market condo development. It's changed our community. It changed those families. And the decisions of municipal government, provincial governments, and federal governments have gentrified communities that once were built on the back of blue-collar workers, like the District of North Vancouver. When my grandfather immigrated in the 30s to Canada, he was poor, and the place he went was Deep Cove. Who knew it would turn into the place that it is today? I'm not proud of the gentrification. I think we could have done it very, very differently to impact people in a different way and not negatively, as was the case with Emery Village and other areas. Lower Lynn Creek was another area, an area of single family homes where people wanted to remain and retire. And what started off as townhouses, row houses on Mountain Highway resulted in the towers that we see today. I'm not great with change. I never have been. I'm a Taurus, I'm a bull. I'm a bit stubborn, and I love this community with all my heart. I'm the last of my family that lives here. My children are 5th generation. And because of that, my father was a member of the Lions Housing Society, and we brought hundreds of units into the Seymour with the partnerships of the provincial government back in the day, the CMHC, federal government, and the municipality. We put up land, feds put up money, and the province put up money, and we had long-term leases. And it was low-income housing. And it was the eclectic nature of the community that so many was the reason why so many wanted to come to the district and call it home. You know, the trails and the rivers and the beaches that we've got. But it was the people and the cool parts of the community. And that is why so many wanted to move here. And I've always said that a party is better when everybody has a different financial ability. Everybody comes from a different place, a different color, a different size, a different shape. I'll take my 2 minutes. And that is what the strength is of North Vancouver. We're activists. We've always been loud. Mr. Marining was a loud activist way back then. He helped stave Stanley Park. Greenpeace had many of their senior directors that lived here. We were always a community of activists, and we always stood up for what was right. My heart breaks for a senior couple that I understood is living in the bush. Several years ago, I reached out because somebody had called me and told me that there was a family of 6 living in a covered pickup truck in the parking lot of Capilano Mall. And it was the middle of winter. and I got them into a hotel on Capilano Road. They were afraid that social services would come and take their kids away. The dad was working on a construction site. Not all homeless people are addicted. And not all people that live in housing aren't. I have many friends. One of my closest friends I lost to addiction, and she lived on the waterfront. So this is one of those challenging issues where, as a representative of this community, I hear your fears and concerns. But I also have to take the responsibility of doing what's right. We are going to commit to a neighborhood committee. We are going to continue to press the province. We are going to address the challenges. We are going to look at the design of the building to make sure that it is in keeping with the neighborhood and the issues that, and I want to work with the neighborhood, the issues of the community are addressed. We need to look at a two-pronged approach to addiction in this province. It is a disease. It is not a choice. It is a disease. It is not a choice. Housing is not the only thing that people that are addicted need. And not all of the people in this building will have issues of addiction. Some of them just had bad luck. So I hear you, and I've always stood by the community, and we will work to address the issues that this project could bring into this community. The Travelodge is a bad example, and it was a rotten timing. It threw this project a curveball, but I don't back down from much, and I'm not going to back down from this. I will be there to support the community, and we all need to come together, and that's how this will be successful, and we will remain that eclectic community and look after those people that have lived here but just got some bad luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ma.
I don't know if I'm going to say anything really different, but I am going to give my my view and the reasons for my decision. There is a need in the district for all forms of housing for many members of the community, including supportive housing. The reality is that in order to achieve this, we need to work with senior levels of government. Municipalities cannot and should not do this on their own. For this project, it would be the provincial government through BC Housing, if it's approved. I took a lot of time since the last public hearing 3 weeks ago to consider or reconsider all the comments and feedback. Like the other members of council, I do want to thank the people who provided input on this important issue. As some know, I was previously at BC Housing for 6 years, and I currently work for a nonprofit society that has a housing department. I'm managing a supportive and affordable housing project in the downtown east side. I would say that I have some experience on housing. Housing projects will bring change to a community. I don't think anyone's denying that. I do appreciate the concerns raised by local residents. At the same time, I have seen positive change result from the development of new supportive housing. During the public hearings, I heard a lot of opinions. I don't agree with some of the comments where voices in opposition were categorized as people who don't have compassion or were simply NIMBYs. I believe these people are people who love their community and want a safe place for their families. I also heard that we need to help people who are less fortunate for whatever reasons. There were some very compelling stories. To me, this is not a simple vote, and then we move on to the next issue. It appears that this project will have council support tonight, but I hope this council will continue to be engaged with the other organizations and the community, specifically BC Housing. I trust that they will strive for a tenant mix that closely represents the people identified in our community during the recent homeless count. that should include seniors, women, and people with disabilities. I look to BC Housing to manage this project with the shared interests of the residents and community in mind. To Vancouver Coastal Health, this council agreed to change the program to include 5 complex care residents. I hope there's an opportunity for other residents to also benefit from this more high level of professional care and support. To Kevin and his team at LUMA, from my own experience working with LUMA, they have accepted working in challenging situations and made positive differences in many people's lives. I look forward to LUMA forming a committee that will work with the neighbors and RCMP on any issues that may come up. I have given this issue a lot of thought. I ultimately believe that this supportive housing project will benefit the entire district in the long run. All things considered, I will vote in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Forbes, your comments, please.
Thank you, Worship. I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, but just add a few things. First, I want to thank all of the public that came out and spoke to us. All of your voices are important. That's one of the reasons I ran to be on this council, is because I wanted everybody's voice to be heard. Not just the people who maybe speak the loudest, but also the people that can't speak for whatever reason. So I did review, I attended all the meetings. I did review all my notes. I also reviewed all the minutes that were taken to make sure that I understood and had all the information I could possibly get. I also reached out for more information, and I didn't get all the answers I wanted to get back, but I know that there'll be another chance for the public to speak to this issue, and I'm going to do my best to get the answers that I'm still looking for. This is a very difficult decision. This is my second term on council, and I think this is probably one of the hard ones, because I care compassionately for the neighborhood. I support the neighborhood. I understand the fears that were expressed. But a couple of weeks ago, when it was -15, I couldn't help but think of people that are homeless, that are maybe in vehicles or tents. And I couldn't help but think, what if that was my mother? What if that was my child? We can't turn our back on all of the citizens. We need to speak up and stand up for all of the citizens in the district. This development provides critical care and supportive housing, and it's also providing homes for the homeless. It doesn't mean that the 60 units that are not critical care, that everybody will have drug issues or mental issues. It just means a home and support systems there for them if they need it. I'm also very proud of the number of partners that are involved in this, because the district couldn't do it on its own. The district supplied the land, but we couldn't have supplied the capital funding and the operating funding and guaranteed long-term funding, so that this is not sort of when a new council comes along, things may change. So I'm really proud of all of the partners that are involved in here. Supportive housing is needed. And this particular site, although maybe not the best site that could be found, but currently out of all the lots that the district owns, this is a site that was chosen by the partners that they were willing to support and fund. So it does fall into the criteria of being close to transit support, close to support, and close to services. And I think in the end, that's going to benefit the residents of this building as well as the community as a whole. A lot of the homeless people that will be put into this building are already here. And I didn't get to do a criminal check on my next door neighbor. So I'm not sure why people think that they have the right to do that just because it's a homeless person that's trying to find a home. They have the same rights as we do, including having a roof over their head. Uh, I respect all of the views that have been said and were brought forward. But in the end, I had to stop and think that what we're actually voting on tonight is land use and zoning. So although I, like other councillors have said, I really want to see a community committee, not just a point person for this development. I want to see a committee that meets regularly. And I want to see reports given to council from the RCMP, as the mayor has mentioned, and the fire department about the number of emergency calls that are going out, if there's an increase, and then we need to deal with that as a council. We need to follow up. We don't just make this decision and that's it. We wash our hands. We need to stay on top of this, and I promise you that I will stay on top of this, and I can almost assure you that this full council will stay on top of it. I also was pleased with reading after the closing on the 15th of January. On January the 18th, there was an announcement from the government about there would be some parts of the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act, that this would not fall under. So there would be exceptions. So part of that has already been mentioned by Councillor Pope, that the visitors they'd now be able to monitor the visitors, and they'd be able to do wellness checks on people. So I think that's a step in the right direction. I think maybe the provincial government is hearing your voices that spoke up and realizing that they need to do better than what they were doing. Change is really hard. No matter what it is, it's really hard. But there's two quotes that kind of come to mind, and I'll just end with those two quotes. One is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And this is a good project. And the other one is, a society can be judged by how well it treats those less fortunate. And I think the district is a compassionate community, and we should treat everybody with the respect and dignity that they deserve. So I'll be in favor of this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Council, we've gone through the speaking time, so I'm prepared to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item up for consideration this evening is item 8.2. This is bylaw 8669, the 2024 to 2028 financial plan bylaw. And this is in the middle of a long process. We've had a number of meetings along the way, but we had directed staff to prepare a lot of bylaws based upon the discussions that we had, the public input and discussions we've had in the last while. And so, Mr. Daniel, do you have any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Little. This financial plan reconfirms priorities identified through the prior year's planning cycle and continues our steady long-term approach in a challenging fiscal environment. The proposed property tax increase on the North Shore is the lowest on the North Shore and amongst the lowest in the region over this council's term. This process started last fall, and following public input period in January, council held its budget deliberations meeting and directed staff to prepare the financial plan bylaw for approval based on a 7% property tax increase, including 6.5% to maintain service levels and 0.5% to address the infrastructure deficit. Staff are also exploring options to support business in preparation for the tax distribution workshop this spring, and took note of a number of ideas to improve the process for next year. And with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you very much. And I'll be moving the recommendation, which is that we grant first, second, and third reading to the approval bylaw 8669 2024, seconded by Councillor Hanson. I've made comments about this publicly at several points along the way. Obviously, nobody wants to be putting forward a 7% increase necessarily. Our community is getting hit with cost increases across the board, but this is reflective of what the municipality is getting hit with. All of our construction contracts are coming up dramatically higher than originally planned, and yet our community still expects us to be able to deliver on those projects and priorities for our community, which means we have to find additional revenue along the way. And so While I'm not an enthusiastic supporter of a 7% going forward, and have largely been a supporter of much more modest percentages in past since I started on council in 2005. I don't see a way around this at this time. And I think that this has to be, this is responsible. This is us making sure that our capital works, including our facilities and our public spaces, are maintained at a good state of repair. And even though we don't have an aggressive agenda of adding new changes and new additional services, this is the cost of a state of good repair for our community. So I will be supportive of the recommendation. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the preparation of the 2024 to 2028 draft financial plan and workbook. I appreciate the amount of work involved and the expertise demanded of the exercise. I appreciate all of the comments of my fellow councillors throughout the process, the workshops that have been conducted, and I agree with the comments you just made, Mayor. Underscoring the 7% increase that we face this year, that of course no one is happy about, is that much has changed in our fiscal environment since the 2022 election. We've witnessed persistent inflation, costs in the district have continued to rise, especially the cost of infrastructure. And there's now increased demands in the district with respect to the provincial housing initiatives that are going to impose additional cost of operation. Significant issues exist as to the potential costs associated with the North Shore wastewater treatment and also with the Iona treatment facility, which is underway. And the investment climate has changed. And in all of this, it becomes necessary, and it's a challenging task. We need to balance the rate of tax growth. We need to challenge the maintenance of our infrastructure reserves, as well as control incursions into debt. And we need to make sure that we're maintaining appropriate investments in the services the community expects and the infrastructure which is required now and into the future. And as we do all of that, to add one further complexity, we need to maintain sufficient flexibility to permit us to make the necessary adjustments to accommodate the ever-changing fiscal environment. Just one thing I do want to say on the topic of taxes. I do not believe that local government taxation is where we need to look with respect to broad social issues and alleviating the most pressing social issues in our community, because social government taxation by necessity is a regressive tax. Everyone pays the same amount. And it's a myth to suggest that everyone in the district is wealthy because they have expensive homes. The truth is that people in the district have a great range of income levels. And I don't want it to become an assumed fact that we're just going to increase taxes as much as necessary because the public can afford to pay it. They can't. And so we need to look to other levels of government when we think about more progressive taxation. And I did take a minute as I reflected upon this budget to think, how much money has the federal government taken from district taxpayers through income tax? How much money has the provincial government taken through income tax and PST, and the federal government through GST? If we wanted a fairer system of taxation, we'd look at some kind of grant system whereby money would flow back into local governments to maintain these very essential services. Because if we just continue to increase taxes in order to meet the demands of our community, we're going to find ourselves in a very unfair situation where a whole group of residents in the district simply are not going to be able to afford to live here. With those comments, I do believe that the arrangement that has been struck here, 7%, and I'll just carry on a little bit into my 2 minutes, a 7% increase is reasonable, with 0.5% of that being allocated to infrastructure. That leaves a 6.5% increase to address operational demands. Going forward, I hope we can return to the 1% allocation for infrastructure. I also believe we need to find a strategy to lower our taxes beyond these 7% increases because they're just not sustainable long-term basis. And if I could just also respond to an argument that arrives that, oh, well, seniors who are a group in our community that often face limitations of income, notwithstanding the fact they own homes and have challenges at times paying our taxes. The assertion is made, well, they can defer their taxes. Well, first of all, you can't defer the utility levies. So those are going to rise because of the projects that I've mentioned. So a greater and greater portion of our tax bill is going to be utility levels. And secondly, there's a lot of people in our community who simply don't want to put their taxes into a debt that's compounding at these high interest rates, and that is going to become very significant. People can live decades in their homes in retirement. And I just don't think it's an adequate answer to say, well, we'll let these taxes rise and somewhere or other they'll be paid for by housing equity. So with those comments, I do think we're going to have to maintain a very sharp eye on tax rates going forward. But I do believe that for the moment, we've struck an appropriate balance. Again, I'd like to thank the financial team. The district has benefited from the very good work that has been done by the financial team over the years in their financial management. And I've come to respect the great deal of expertise involved in the balancing act that's required. And I believe we can have confidence that going forward, we are going to meet these challenges head on and find the right balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any other speakers at this time. Councillor Miri?
You knew I would speak.
There you go.
You forgot the property transfer tax, Councillor Hanson. 2021, the provincial government raked in, and I'm sure it was beyond this, $3 billion in property transfer tax. We have never been wealthier. We have never been wealthier in our community. And yet we continue to see taxes go up. Affordability is in the stratosphere. It doesn't exist anymore. Below market housing in 4 years is market in today's current numbers. You can only live there for 4 years and then you're back up to market. We have never had so much stuff. When my grandma lived on Panorama Drive and my dad was growing up there, there was no bus. My grandfather had to buy him a car to get to UBC because it would take him a day to get there. We are not living within our means, and that is no disrespect to finance, trying to juggle this very complex place we find ourselves in. Growth is not paying for growth. The Regional Board of Metro Vancouver debates that and discusses it. It is not paying for growth. I've said this about Mr. Joyce on the eve of his retirement. When he started, projects were tens of millions, our director of engineering. And then throughout his career, they turned into hundreds of millions. And he's been here since he graduated university. We were very fortunate to retain him all these years. And now those projects are billions and billions of dollars on the backs of 2.5 million people in the region. Do that math. It doesn't work. I have heard for 28 years, well, it's only $25. It's only $35. It's only $55. It's only $100 on the average home. 25 years ago, I had a $400,000 mortgage on 1/3 of an acre off the Seymour River. And I thought I was going to choke on $400,000 mortgage. I think the average house then was $500,000. The average house in the district of North Vancouver is $2.2 million. Like, when does the ceiling crack? When is too much too much? The gap, and we were just talking about how did we get to this place where we have so many people living on the street? So many people struggling. We got a letter from a lady the other day that said, my son is paying 30% of his income in an apartment that is a rental in one of our projects, and he can't afford to save for school. But that's the going rate, right? 30% of your income. But income has not kept pace with inflation or and the cost of land. You know, we talk about these projects. I was talking to somebody at Metro Vancouver the other day saying, you know, all municipalities can look at pieces of land that they can put up for development, but we all have different challenges. You know, our land is on a floodplain and the side of a mountain. You know, it's quite different building on a brownfield. I'll take my 2 minutes. On a brownfield, on a hill, and on a floodplain. The two need different things, and that's what costs the money. We want to change. We want to look at our town centers, and we want to redevelop them. Mr. Stewart, when I was first elected, told me that an official community plan is a living document and it's subject to change. Ours has changed very little since 2010. And that doesn't mean that the document is not relevant from when it was adopted to today. Many of the commitments in that document are very important. Sadly, we don't follow all of them. We write them down, but we don't follow them. So subject to change. I guess that's what that means. It's not that eclectic community anymore. And I think it's imperative that we try to find a middle ground in recognizing, as Councillor Hanson points out, that just because you live here doesn't mean you're rich. You can be land rich and cash poor. But we know this, that people don't come to the District of North Vancouver to start living their life. They move here to remain here the majority of their life, die here. Some are fortunate enough to be born here, and they will make that decision to stay until the end of their life because this place is home. But this place is becoming, along with everything else that the world is being challenged with, and the high cost of living, groceries, gas, utilities. Metro Vancouver's utilities are going up, folks. And if you think this increase is big, we need to really work hard to manage the increase of the utility. Councillor Hanson talks about the wastewater treatment plant. We don't know what those numbers are right now. We are making these decisions in silos. And I get that it's $180, but I can't support $180 today. I hope that we never see a 7% increase in this municipality again. I'm going to register a protest vote because I think in times like this, we need to pull way, way back. And that doesn't mean, and I'll finish here, Mayor Little, that doesn't mean that commitments made years and years ago can't be kept. And I think we have to discuss that, how we go forward, because commitments to a spirit trail that was a legacy in 2010, you know, why didn't that go forward? A field, why didn't that go forward? Because there's always something else. And I think that's what we have to wrestle with, to try to find a middle ground.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. Thank you to all staff who worked on the latest financial plan and Rick's team for taking the lead on that. It's pretty obvious. No one wants to pay more in taxes. However, speaking with the staff, this is a status quo budget. The proposed 7% increase is a concern, but things are higher due to inflation and other cost pressures. We have many programs in the district, especially maintaining our infrastructure. But if we make cuts there, that's probably not possible or probably unwise. We either pay now or potentially pay more later. I'll support this motion. However, I have a further comment to staff. I ask that they come back for the next budget cycle with some potential programs or budget cuts. This could provide council with a more fulsome opportunity to debate priorities should the proposed increase at that time be another 7%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. I see no further speakers at this time. Oh, Councillor Back, your comments, please.
Thank you, Mayor Little. My comments will be fairly brief. We have had an opportunity to deliberate most recently in the workshop last week on the 5-year financial plan and the budget. And I just want to say thank you to our staff, in particular, Mr. Rick Daniluk and his team, for all of the work that they've done to put this budget together. We've always had strong financial leadership at the district, and we continue to do so in challenging times. And as Councillor Ma said, nobody wants to pay more, but this is the reality of the fiscal environment that we're living in right now. But I think we are all looking at that. We do not want to see this as the norm year after year. But at the end of the day, we have made a number of commitments to the community. And I'm pleased that all of those commitments are being honored in this year's budget. A number of very important capital projects like the active transportation projects such as Spirit Trail, such as the turf fields that were rightly we heard from the community on last year. While the cost of everything is going up, and we are always trying to find a balance and making sure that district residents and businesses, I want to point out as well as the mayor did in our workshop, small businesses are under a lot of pressure right now, and certainly tax increases are going to continue to, they're going to feel that. But I hope that we can work in other ways to help the small business community through these challenging times as well. But on the whole, I do support this budget, and again, just want to thank staff for all the work that went into putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. See no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. The next item up for discussion is the Natural Area Trails Strategy, item 8.3. We have Ms. Stephanie Warner from Parks Department going to be coming to start the presentation. Ms. Foth, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are bringing forward the Natural Areas Trail Strategy for your consideration. Our presentation tonight is in follow-up to the December 12th Council workshop, where staff presented the draft strategy to Council for discussion. An information report was subsequently provided to Council to provide further information on the topics that Council discussed at the workshop. As Council is aware, the Natural Areas Trail Strategy has been developed over approximately 2 years and included robust consultation with our community, our stakeholders, our partners, and adjacent land managers. Through consultation, we confirmed that our natural areas trails are highly valued and well-loved by our community, not only for our recreation, health, and well-being needs, but also for the natural feel, character, and environmental benefit that these areas provide to our community. Through consultation, we also confirmed an approximate 90% approval rating for the strategy. Tonight, staff are seeking Council's approval of the Natural Areas Trail Strategy, which will provide the direction to staff to proactively plan, manage, and maintain our natural areas trail network, while also continuing to build our partnerships in recognition and support for the thousands of volunteer hours that our community invests in the shared stewardship of these important natural assets for our community. I would now like to invite our Parks Planner, Nicole Foth, to share a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Stephanie said, my name is Nicole Foth, Parks Planner. As Council knows, the Natural Areas Trail Strategy was presented to Council in a workshop in December with discussion on many of the topics included in the strategy. And now it is being brought to Council tonight seeking approval. To introduce this item, there are 6 slides in the presentation. The purpose of the Natural Areas Trail Strategy is to provide direction to plan and manage recreational trails in natural areas with a focus on from, Lynn Canyon, and Seymour. As council is aware, the Seymour area shown on the map does not currently have a plan to manage recreational use. The existing plans for Frome and Lynn Canyon continue to guide staff's work in these areas and will be needed to be updated in the future. As council has seen, the strategy was developed through an engagement process in 2022 and 2023. It included the Parks and Natural Environment Advisory Committee, PNIAC, who unanimously supported the strategy. Stakeholders, local First Nations governments, and the community as well participated. Over 1,900 participated in the first round of engagement and over 1,000 in the second, a very good response. 91% of survey respondents were North Vancouver residents, of which around 80% were from the district. We heard strong support for the strategy, with around 90% for the vision, guiding principles, and the goals. At the council workshop in December, the draft strategy was presented for discussion. Staff heard general support for the strategy, recognition of the need for an area plan for Seymour, the importance of environmental quality and conservation, managing shared use and trail etiquette, and support for the trail network. These topics were discussed and they are included in the strategy. They are reflected in the vision, which is summarized here to balance environmental protection and recreation access. There are 3 goals summarized as experiences, ecosystems, and stewardship. And there are 25 actions that are the steps to implement these goals. The strategy creates a foundation and direction and roadmap. This helps for guiding day-to-day work on the trails, to action on addressing issues on the ground, such as access to areas for recreation, targeting areas for restoration, and improving trail user experience. A couple highlights from the strategy. Ecosystem restoration. This works hand in hand with the trail plans. A well-defined and diverse trail network helps to reduce off-trail impacts and improves conservation efforts. Developing and implementing trail plans. One of the initial actions is to develop the Seymour Area Trail Plan informed by ecosystem analysis and understanding current use. We heard during the council workshop concerns about access and property ownership, and there will be robust engagement with the community, stakeholders, and the Parks and Natural Environment Advisory Committee to develop the Seymour Area Plan, and the plan will be brought to council for consideration. Information and education is another key feature. The mountainside forests are as beautiful as they are rugged, and we can help trail users of all ages and abilities make informed choices about the trails they wish to enjoy through wayfinding, etiquette, trail difficulty information, and safety and preparedness information. Finally, we plan to continue building relationships with adjacent land managers and trail partners to improve the quality and the consistency of the trail network. The recommendation is for approval of the natural areas trail strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking to you, council, for direction. Councilor Hanson, you have a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Councilor Back, seconding. Thank you. Councilor Hanson, your comments.
Much. Very happy to support the strategy as it's put forward. It was already canvassed at a workshop and discussed at that time. Obviously, I'd like to thank all of your hard work and the staff contribution to this. For my part, I agree with what's set out in the document. What we're approving at this stage is essentially a planning exercise. There will be further costs down the road as we seek to implement some of the infrastructure and capital investments which rise out of that planning. For my part, if I could just leave a few ideas as being priorities as we go forward. First of all, safety. I raised this at the workshop. Let us hope that the trail system we create is safe. Too often I see ambulances. I live in the Blue Ridge area, which is one of the primary trail interfaces with residential areas, and too often I see ambulances coming and going. Also, just to emphasize that it's important that the trail system we create is available to a diverse range of users In the report, we talk about the fact that the fastest growing user group is seniors. And as we previously discussed in the last item, the seniors will have paid their fair share of tax. So let us hope that they also have available to them trails that they can use and enjoy. And finally, I mean, the issue that we hear about on council is the disruptive impact that the trail system has in its residential interfaces, where the trailheads interface with residential areas. So let us keep that in mind if we could, and try to do what we can to ensure that people who live in the district are not disturbed by living in the vicinity of the trailheads. So those are some comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Seconder, Councillor Beck, your comments?
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation. Yes, we did have a workshop on this, and so my comments are not going to be much of a departure from that. I just wanted to start by saying that, our community, as we all know, is very much defined by our trails and our natural environment. I spent most of yesterday out in a walk in the trails with my family on Frome, which I do quite frequently. And I'm always amazed by the community up there, whether it's, all of the various types of trail users, whether they're mountain biking or walking or trail running. It's such a special place. And I think we all recognize how it really does define where we live here in the district of North Vancouver. So this is really important work, and I'm very supportive of it. The short-term actions that are identified, I certainly support. I know that there's a lot of interest and support for the Seymour Areas Trails Plan, and I appreciate the speaker who came on behalf of NSMBA tonight to highlight the support as well. And I want to thank NSMBA for all of the work over the years to help us keep these trails in the sort of condition that our residents really appreciate. I just, some of the, I agree with all of the short-term actions, including the one around improving trail sign guidelines and wayfinding in general, which I think will go a long ways to just improve trail users' experience and, knowing what types of trails are where and where to go. And then the one around trailhead amenities as well. And some of these amenities can seem like fairly simple things, like having a recycling facility or a bench to sit and get ready for your ride or your walk. But I think those are important as well, as we see more and more people getting out and enjoying the trails that are right at at our doorstep. So yeah, I guess just want to emphasize how well supported this was. To see that it was 90% of respondents are really supportive of it. I think that's great, and I'll be excited to see these various elements of it come forward over the years to come. So thank you very much.
Just my own comments on the matter. I'll give my qualified support to this. I do think that we need to look at this as though it is a living document, and there are some areas that I have some concerns in it, but I think it's still a good general direction to go. First, I want to thank the North Shore Mountain Bike Association for their comments here today, and for the volunteer coordination that they do give back to our community. My son is one of those air cadets that was digging up the Braemar Dempsey trails, doing some work on it, and having a great time with his friends learning about mountain biking in our community. And it was a great opportunity. I have said at the workshop, and I want to restate it again here, with Seymour being really added as a focus, I want to make the distinction between West Seymour and East Seymour. West Seymour, I think, has great potential to produce excellent trails with great opportunities for people to have different variety of difficulties in the space, and that they're properly supported with a road network to get people to and from those areas. The east side of Seymour, I don't think has that. And when I say the east side, I'm talking about a lot of the illegal trails that are being built on the east facing slope of the Seymour Mountain. The outlet trails go onto private property and cross private property in a number of cases. And we don't have the resources out there to be able to properly manage the negative impacts into those neighborhoods. And I feel for the residents out at Cascade, Sunshine, and Woodlands, because their neighborhood with very narrow streets with no shoulders on them is all of a sudden on sunny days got hundreds and hundreds of cars parked all over the place. And it's not well planned, and frankly, it's private property. They could have a tow truck out there come and remove the cars, but the thing is the tow trucks don't want to go out there because they don't want to make the trip all the way out there just to not have a car there in case, it takes so long to get the tow truck out there. And so the neighbors just put up with it and they're upset. And so as we go forward, I do want to make sure that we carry forward that distinction between the east side of Seymour and the west side of Seymour. The west side of Seymour obviously has both the Park Trail Road, Mount Seymour Road itself properly, not just the Mount Seymour Parkway, but Mount Seymour Road. It has different outlets to different places, so you could spread out some of the burden for it. But the east side has one outlet, and it is too narrow, has no shoulder, and I can't be recommending that as an area for expansion or growth of the service. The other piece I wanted to highlight on it is that when we had the Alpine Rec study going back, I want to say Councilor Mary, 2007, 2000, something like that, we had the Alpine Rec study. And in it, the decision was made that one of the principles was that we weren't going to just infinitely grow the number of trails. There was going to be a process to decide when a new trail was warranted, when closing the trail was warranted. Because you can't just continually expand the system, because what you'll end up with is massive erosion over a huge footprint, rather than something that's more planned with proper trails, with proper, in some cases, rock armoring to make sure that they're properly managed, in some cases, better drainage to make sure that they're not experiencing the same kind of erosion. But we had an intelligent discussion at that time about that you could not just continue to grow it nonstop. You had to have that discussion about moderating or tempering the growth in some areas. So while I recognize that as the number of people in our community goes up, we're obviously going to have need to grow that infrastructure and space, but not entirely to the detriment of the environment. It has to be well considered where, when, what, how much impact we're going to see on the environment due to the particular trail that's being considered. So as I said, you get my qualified support for this. I think I generally support the direction. I just want to make sure that those things are considered at every step along the way as we go forward with this plan. I believe Councillor Murray, you were up. Did you remove your? Okay, Councillor Murray, and then Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and I concur with the mayor in regards to how we move forward on this. And I want to thank the partners and the other levels of government, the work North Shore Mountain Bike Association has done over the years. It grew out of the protection of Cove and Mountain Forest, the concept of partnerships. And when Cove and Mountain Forest was being looked to rezone by the District of North Vancouver all those moons ago, it was based on the protection of the environment and the use of the mountain by all sorts of visitors, horseback riders, runners, the knee knackers were a big group, the mountain biking groups and the mountain biking stores in the region, the hikers group, the Golden Age hikers, the Cub Scouts, seniors, local residents. And there was a science to it as well. There was a science in looking at the protection of the biology, the ecological value of the area. And in fact, there was an area that was set aside that was very environmentally sensitive on the north part of Mountain Forest within the CMHC lands because it was so sensitive. Our parks have seen an unprecedented amount of growth. I sit on Metro Vancouver's parks, and the numbers during COVID were extreme numbers of people because our public health officer said, go outside. And boy, did everybody go outside. I think all the people that were inside all of a sudden said, let's go out and check this thing called outside. And they went out and they were like, oh my God, this is awesome. Let's stay. And, but then at the same time that we had that happening, we had climate change increasing, the rising of temperature that we hadn't seen. All of a sudden, our wet weather, which was 9 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, was kind of getting a little bit drier, and systems were coming into the region on an advanced rate where a huge amount of rain would happen in a very short period of time. And all of those things together have created this perfect storm of the forest floor being degraded, significant amounts of erosion. We saw the looper moth come in a 5-year cycle. The entire south flank of the Cleveland Dam was brown as the Parks Committee for Metro Vancouver went up the gondola at Grouse Mountain to discuss parks planning into the next year. And so the protection of the environment has never been more important. And I concur with the mayor's comments that it can't just be about the expansion. It has to be very smart expansion, and it has to be protection of those areas that have degraded over the years from overuse. The land needs time to regrow. I remember Alan Nixon years and years ago talking about a silviculture program, and hindsight's 2020. And you can go into the forest now and see, I mean, it's happening now because we've got looper moths taking trees down, and all of a sudden there's light that is coming. And sometimes we're having to clear large areas because of the degradation of the trees. But forests need light to grow. And when you see those little saplings over the decades sit there and die and not really grow because there's no light coming through the canopy, you really look back and wonder, did we do it right by just saying, don't do anything? And I think about that often. So this has to be a very careful plan to balance both the access to these jewels that we've saved and protected over the years, where we find our peace and tranquility by going into nature in our back doors, and the balance of protecting that land for future generations. It was the argument, and although one of the subjects of tonight was the longest number of hearings in the district, the lobby that many of us in this community, myself, we had the largest number attend. We had 1,200 residents and visitors attend that public hearing to protect that 1,000 acres of land in the 90s. And it was as much about the recreational needs of the community and people that came to visit in the district as it was about the protection of the environment, because we knew without the protection of the environment, we wouldn't have the recreational opportunities that we have. So I am, looking at this, and I read it more, and I had a very long talk. Ms. Voth gave me a good hour the other day talking about this, and I appreciate that time. I do agree that we need a plan so we know how we're going to move forward. I would like that plan. Is this my second 2 minutes? Oh, darn. I'd like that plan to be expanded across the North Shore. And I know we've talked about that over the years, where we need to have a set of policies that go across the North Shore, work with our partners, provincial government, Metro, the 2 municipalities anyway, and maybe 3 with Lions Bay, and prioritize the environment next to prioritizing the access into these areas. I think we have a lot of work to do. And I wonder about, our ability to look at all the work that Parks has got on their plate and deal with it, because it's some big stuff. So I would like Mr. Stewart's staff to be able to provide that those moments when they'll come back with this work and check in with council to make sure we're all in the right place. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. I just wanted to, I've spoken to you about these issues that got raised by the community to me, and I just wanted to highlight them again. One of them is safety. We're turning a lot of our trails into multi-use trails, but you get people seniors who are walking slower or have some disabilities with their walking. And then you have cyclists come racing behind them. And so I would just like to emphasize that as much as I think the multi-use trails are valuable and good, there also needs to be safe trails for people, just pedestrians, senior people walking. So safety is really important. And the other thing that has come up to me quite often is actually communication. So when you're starting a process or starting a program, whether it be you're changing a trail into a multi-use trail, or whether you're making a new trail, that signage and good communication plan to the community about what's happening and before it happens, because a lot of people are seeing it afterwards. And I don't know if I'm not saying that's staff's fault, because maybe it's been broadcast and the public just hasn't picked it up. But good communication with the community about what you're doing would be really useful. Thank you. And thank you for all your work doing this. This is a big project, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no further speakers on the matter. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Council. Or we want to go straight through? We got 4 items remaining. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, that was Councilor. I thought that was Mr. Jordan going stretch. I want to break. All right. We are going to continue. If people need to have a stretch, they're welcome to do so. But we'll soldier on here. At this point, for this item and for the next item, we have presentations from our IT group. Mr. Jordan here is going to be speaking. So the next item is item 8.4. This is the corporate plan progress reporting in Cascade. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just waiting for my technology to catch up. There we go. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and to you, Council, and also the members of the public here. I am here to share, as you mentioned, our next 2 agenda items. The first being how we are using a new software tool called Cascade to manage our corporate plan. I will be very brief. I have a few slides followed by a quick demonstration, and of course I'll pause prior to the next agenda item. Thank you. Starting off with the benefits. One thing that we have heard from our colleagues in the district is they would love some transparency into how the work they do on a day-to-day basis supports our corporate plan. We've also heard that from council, and we've heard that from the public as well. So we're using a new tool called Cascade, which will help with that. Notably, it provides a way to align the work that staff do on a day-to-day basis with our corporate plan to make sure they're progressing the goals of council and of the organization. Information is consolidated in a single place. It's there for everyone to review. It will save a ton of time in compiling information for updates, including for the annual report once a year. And very soon we'll be working towards developing KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics that we'll be including, and then being able to share to the public on our website showing our corporate progress. A little bit of background. You all know this, of course. Our corporate plan was endorsed in October of 2023. It incorporates the official community plan, the OCP action plan, and council strategic priorities. To support those, staff within departments identified objectives and corporate actions they would take to support those objectives. And of course, all that work informs departments' day-to-day work plans. You've all seen this graphic, I'm sure. This is indicative of all of the different strategies and financial plans that go into the corporate plan. The ones we're going to focus on today are the corporate plan, of course, and our annual department work plans and the relationship between those 2 things. Within, we have 6 corporate goals that have been identified by council. Supporting those, we have council's priorities. Staff, as I mentioned, have identified objectives and corporate actions they'll take to support those objectives. And together, those 4 objects result in the corporate plan. Now, staff, of course, identify different programs and projects in order to support those actions that support the objectives, and that reflects the day-to-day work that staff do. Those are the departmental work plans, and that's the thing I'm going to share with you today using Cascade in this demonstration. Let me just switch over. Now, this is what your corporate plan looks like within this software tool. So as you see at the top, we have the different corporate goals related to transportation, housing, the economy, the climate, the community, and the strength of our organization. I'll dig into one of these, namely the childcare options. I'll indicate that there is the corporate priority and a number of objectives that have been identified from across the organization, not just within our friends in the PPP or community planning, but also within engineering. Our goal is to increase childcare by 2,050 spaces, and to do that, we've identified a number of corporate actions. And to do that, our colleague in corporate planning, Tina Atba, has identified the childcare program, which includes 3 different projects that staff are working on in order to support that program. At day-to-day basis, staff will be working within these projects and providing updates, which bubbles up right up into the priority. And this will result in the ability for us to provide real-time day-to-day updates for council and to eventually to the public as well on the progress towards our corporate plan goals. Within a priority, we of course have indicated start and end dates, the staff that are responsible, as well as the ability for staff to add comments and quarterly updates. And I mention that primarily because when it comes to council, we aim to provide council with a quarterly update now with respect to the progress we're making on the corporate plan, right down to the priority level. As the corporate plan, as this work wraps up, very soon we'll be able to do that for you, and very soon as well for the public along with those KPIs. That concludes my presentation on the corporate plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Just everything okay? Okay.
My presentations are always exciting.
Okay, Council, Councillor Forbes, you have a motion. I mean, I think we don't really need a motion on the matter. I guess we can receive the presentation. That would be appropriate. So, Councillor Forbes, is there a seconder for receiving the presentation? Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, your comment on the matter?
I'm really glad to see this. This is something that we mentioned it to each other before.
Yep.
This is something that I really think provides, as you say, the transparency and accountability. It lets the public also see how we're progressing on things, or maybe how we're not. But this is really good, and I'm really excited to see this go up and live and people start using it, including council. Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you very much. Additional comments?
No, just thanks. It's all good.
Okay, would anybody else? Councillor Pope, your comments, please.
Thank you very much. This was something that was really needed that I noticed right away when I got here. And thank you very much for making this happen. It's really going to improve our overall level of service to the community, I believe.
Just my own comments on the matter. I mean, obviously the effectiveness of a tool like this is driven by people using it. And it does look like it's a fairly easy user interface, but you know, what I worry about is that you're going to go, oh, why is this one so far behind? Oh, we just haven't updated it yet. That unfortunately is a pretty common thing in these kinds of markers. And so it's going to take a certain amount of diligence from the managers to make sure that that these things are being monitored and updated regularly. And hopefully they're as simple as you pointed out there, so that we're not committing a tremendous amount of staff time to the management of the tool. But at the same time, that it means that when the community goes to look up information, that information is reliably recent and up to date, and provides them clarity on where their process is. So I'm optimistic that this can be an effective tool in that way. I am concerned about ongoing subscription prices to these kinds of projects. And so, you know, if we're not getting the value out of it, then we need to be willing to make changes. At this point, I'd like to monitor it and see how well this is being used as a tool by our different departments to track progress. So optimistic, and thank you very much for the presentation. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I like that council can use it because there's quite a lot of applications we're not allowed to use. And so I do like that council can use it. But I am curious about the level of productivity with all of the different applications that we have and all of the work that we have on our table. You know, I mean, your job, like I had said earlier, that change is hard for me. And that's all you do in your department is constantly change. And it's often hard to keep up. I mean, before it was like a year, you'd have to get a new phone. Now it's like a month and there's another phone, right? And it does make me wonder with all of these tools that everybody has to fill in, it takes longer to do anything now. What has that done to productivity? I remember when, you know, computers were meant to save us time, but are they really? You know, we all have 400 numbers that we have to remember, passwords, constantly changing that, filling out more information. You know, it's getting to be so complex that you spend half your day just filling out the stuff and you haven't even begun the work yet. We still as a council can get the same letter 3 times in 3 different ways. We haven't quite figured that one out yet. I look forward to that day when we just get one copy of the letter. So I guess I'm a bit mixed about this. It's like, I like that we can keep track of what's going on and where we are. I think that's really important. And I think it's something that we've been missing. We used to rely on people to come and tell us that. But I do worry about all of the technology that continues to be there to improve, but it may improve a situation, but how much longer, how much more time is it taking up? And I think we really need to look at balancing those two things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see no other further speakers on the matter. Call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to your next item of business, which is item 8.5, pace of development.
On this topic, I'm speaking on behalf of General Manager Dan Milburn, our General Manager of Planning, Properties and Permits. I can never remember which order those go in. PPP. I am not sharing the pace of development report. However, I believe you have it in front of you and you're all quite familiar, I guess, what's in it. But what's new is that the data and the information shared within the pace of development report is now available on our website. There's a new page that shows progress towards our housing objectives, specifically towards the targets in the OCP. I'm just going to scroll down the screen here and you'll see the charts that exist within the pace of development report, as well as, if you go down to the very bottom, a collection of charts and graphs that, as I say, speak to the OCP and the pace of development report over a number of different topics, right down into the specific projects, the individual projects, and the stage they are within the organization. For example, if I were to expand the proper projects that are within the building permit phase, you can see the number of them that are currently in that situation. If I expand the 220 project at 220 Mountain Highway, it'll show the numbers and types of different units. You'll see that this one displaced 6 market housing and is introducing 134 rental and 6 social, for example. This page went live this afternoon, 4 p.m. It will be updated monthly by our colleagues in PPP. And they will, after we work through the kinks, we'll be looking for opportunities to update it more frequently.
Great, thank you very much. So the Councilor Pope, you willing to move receipt of the presentation? Thank you. Is there a seconder on receipt? Thank you. Councilor Pope, your comments, please.
Again, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the work on this. This is absolutely fantastic, and we really needed this, and so did the community. in being able to understand what is going on in the district in terms of all the housing, all the work that's being done, and what kind of progress we're making on it. I know that in the past, it was very difficult for me to, try and get a grip on how everything was going. And this makes it lovely and clear and much better than anything we've had. So I very much appreciate the work, and I'm sure the community does as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder on the matter. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to ask if when you click on the name of the development, will it show it on a map?
Oh, I love maps. Not yet, no. I would love to include that, and I think we'll work towards that since I'm personally in favor of maps. It does not at the moment, no.
So it
But
used
the address is there.
Yes, the address is there. Currently, it's not linked to a spatial view of the project.
Okay, so that link that we've got on our website right now where you can, is it gone? Where you can look at the map and there's a little building and you can click on it?
No, that's still there.
That's still there. So
significant
this is
projects-
not replacing that.
No, we actually have plans to improve that.
Okay, I think they should all go together because it's all kind of the same information. But again, as Mayor Little pointed out, it's a matter of updating. And in the past, that's where the challenge is that all of this has to be regularly updated. So it's just second nature, and that's, part of the issue. So, okay, maps, I'm visual, so I like maps. Thank you.
In response to that, Councilor Mary, this data is driven by our system. So our permitting system provides this information. There's currently a little bit of cleanup that our PPP staff have to do before it shows up on the website. But once again, we work out those kinks, it will be live. There will be no updating. It will just be pulled from the information that's gathered through the natural course of our business. Automatically.
Yeah. Much. Additional speakers on the matter? Okay, prepared to call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your presentation. Additional comments?
Just very briefly, wanted to thank this team and of course Mr. Andrew for all his work with us, and of course Ms. Stallum on our side presenting this information. For council's knowledge, we do have a workshop on February 12th coming up soon to discuss both pace of development as well as provincial housing initiatives. So we'll pour more into the actual data and discussion about the potential future issues, and just wanted to remind council of that and let you know. But tonight was all about the tool. We'll be having a discussion about pace and unit count in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on this evening's agenda. So we're on to item 8.6. This is the 2024 social service grants core funded agencies. We have Ms. Adva, Ms. Branson here. Ms. Adva, do you have any opening comments, please?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. These are the core grants, the annual core grants coming before you tonight with recommendations for close to or over $1.8 million. Just to clarify, this is one of a number of grant programs that come your way. So the ones which are managed through community planning, the next ones will come in the summertime. Those are the community service grants for which your advisory committee, the Community Services Advisory Committee, weighs in on heavily, as well as the childcare grants from the Childcare Grants Committee. With your permission, Your Worship, I'd like to ask Erica Branson to give you a short overview. She's our social planner, as we know, and very much involved with the agencies in reviewing the core grants along with staff from finance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. So good evening, Mayor and Council. As mentioned, my name is Erica Branson, social planner with the Community Planning Department.
May I just have the volume
or
the microphone right in front? That'd be great. Thank you.
Or lower my chair, maybe. So the 2024 report recommends Council approve a total budget of $1,822,986 in core funding to 12 North Shore agencies. These core funded agencies provide important services to many community members, including our youth, our seniors, and our children and families. The 2024 budget proposes a 3% inflationary adjustment from 2023. And while all of the agencies described in the report are notable for the work that they do, I'd like to briefly mention two of them tonight. First, there's Lynn Valley Services Society, who continues to expand their reach and scope to serve the growing Lynn Valley community. They've hired a part-time executive director recently and have participated in a nonprofit leadership training course. The agency would like to continue developing and building their capacity and explore the feasibility of expanded programming and also some space issues. And then we've got the North Shore Neighborhood House, the Solutions Navigator Program, which launched in November 2022 with funding through UBCM. The navigators help district residents find available supports and services across the region. The most common requests for supports are housing and financial assistance. The program to date has demonstrated very strong results, and it appears to be filling a gap by reaching different demographic groups who are not being well served by some of the other local programs and service providers that we have. Staff recommend funding the program for an additional 2-year period to maintain the momentum, to monitor the impact, and also to work with service providers to close some of these gaps. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, your comments and a motion, if you please. Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray, go ahead.
Thank you for your report and this information. I mean, of course, I wholeheartedly support this, and it's amazing what these organizations can pull off with the kind of money. And I know that this is not the whole amount of money that they get. This is a grant, and so their budgets are different from what's laid out here. But, Family Services of the North Shore, 11,305 lunches, snacks and visits to the food cupboard. These stories tell a lot about what's going on in our community. It'd be interesting, Ms. Branson, to look at another point in the year, just to give council an idea how those numbers have changed, in the discussions that we've had tonight. They'll just maybe tie up that story as to really what some of these challenges are that we're dealing with. 7,332 total visits to Thrive Family Center in Maplewood. North Shore Community Resources Services reached 28,000 families. 28,000 families are being reached. How's that changed over the years? Is that number going up? Is there that discrepancy between the level of wealth and the numbers that we need to serve because of the impact of that? It's an interesting thing to look at. Lynn Valley Services, Molly Nye House, 2,500 participants. It tells a lot. I think this kind of information tells a lot about our community, and we need to have we need to allow it to guide us in how we move forward. Because as Councillor Forbes so eloquently pointed out, that we're only as strong as those that we support. We lift up those at the bottom and we all rise, right? That's the goal, I think, in life. And so it's amazing how these societies and organizations pull off the work that they do. Certainly in this challenging place we call life right now. Thank you for your work, and I support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Seconder, Councillor Hanson, any additional comments?
Yeah, well, just thank you for all the good work you've done. I would note that the 3% inflationary increase which has been given is no doubt less than the actual cost pressures that these organizations are facing. I've said before, say again now, we receive excellent value for these grants. The money we provided is leveraged in a very significant way by the volunteer activities of the organizations who receive these funds. Very much support this program. These organizations provide excellent outreach and service to our community and our most vulnerable. So thank you for getting this done. And I, for one, would be open to yet more inflationary increases to these organizations, given the heavy demands, no doubt, they face with inflation and increased population demands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Ma, your comments?
Thank you, Erica. Good to see you again. Through the hard work of all these societies, these grants enable the district to continue to being a great place to live. As I mentioned earlier, my day job is working for one of Canada's largest social services agencies. They definitely know how to make the most of any funding they receive. So I'm pretty sure that they'll probably appreciate this. So thank you for doing that work.
Thank you very much. I thought I saw another name. Anyone else wishing to speak to this matter?
I'm just going to say one more thing.
Okay.
On the last page, it says government revenue sources such as the district's core funding are fundamental to ensuring a stable nonprofit sector. Across the province, this represents 335,000 jobs and contributed 28 billion to BC's economy in 2021. Those are some numbers for the nonprofit sector. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see no further speakers on the matter. Prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Look at that, it's 9:05 and we just have one more item.
Done so well. You're jinxing it. All right. Item 8.7 on this evening's agenda is the UBCM motion, local government online voting. This is an initiative of Councillor Back. And I said initiative, it's on my mind. I noted a note here from the clerk mentioned that in the third paragraph where it says therefore be it resolved, the word says to initiative legislative change. That should be to initiate. So note that change in the wording. Other than that, all good. Councillor Back, it's your report. Look for your direction on the matter. Thank you. Is there a seconder on the recommendation? Councillor Ma, okay. Councillor Back, your comments, please.
Thank you, Mayor Little. The report hopefully outlines the reason for me bringing this motion forward. And I've tried to include, enough examples here that will show where this has been tried in other parts of the country. But this motion is a motion for UBCM asking the province to take another look at changes to the Local Government Act that would allow the provision of online voting for municipal elections. Currently, we typically see very low voter turnout for local elections. And in the opportunity to vote online is something that's not currently permitted in BC under the Act, although it is permitted in some parts of Canada, as has been highlighted in the report. So I believe it's one of the motions, one of the actions that we can take to increase voter turnout potentially by using technology to a greater degree. This has been brought forward, as has been highlighted in the report, a number of times over the years. And one of the concerns that the province has had is the issue around security. And we had a member of the public speaking to that issue tonight. And I no doubt that's extremely important that cybersecurity is taken into account when we look at this. But I do believe that when we look at voter turnout, 22.6% in 2022 here in the district, with an all-time low, I think, of around 16% back in 2008, that we should be looking at everything we can possibly do to make voting more accessible, awareness around elections, engagement in the citizenry in the district greater. So that's why I'm bringing the motion forward. I think it's time for another discussion about online voting as a way to, again, just make voting more accessible to everyone when we live most of our lives online and do so much of our day-to-day tasks online that looking to local elections as a place to start online voting makes a lot of sense. And as I said, it has been tried in other parts of the country. I was speaking with a councillor from a city in Ontario at the FCM convention last year in Toronto. And he said they tried it for the first time, online voting, in their last election. And while they didn't see a huge spike in voter turnout, they did see an increase, and it was, they generally had no issues with it. So that's why I'm bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Seconder, any further discussion?
Yes, I just want to thank Councillor Back for bringing this forward. To me, it's relatively simple. The world's evolving, and the way we do things needs to adapt. And the key here is the goal is to increase public engagement and more involvement in our democratic processes. I don't know how more simple it can be, but thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you, Councillor Back. I did reach out to Metro Vancouver's UBCM representative, Councillor Craig, Hodge from Coquitlam, and just asked him where the resolution, because there has been discussion about this in the past, as Councillor Back points out, there's been 3, 2011, 2015, and 2019 on this issue, Fort St. John, Soyuz, and Thompson Nicola Regional District. And they all passed in regards to support for this initiative. The province's response was the same, and Councillor Back has mentioned that it's the issues around security. And I would say that one of the things that we didn't talk about in 2019 that we're talking about right now is AI as another concern. And then the recent, well, maybe not so recent to the current president, but foreign interference in federal elections, and the discussion about interference in our own Canadian federal election. And, the security around this, I mean, we are getting hacked all the time. We are getting emails constantly that, are coming from nefarious sources. And, I think that's going to be the real big issue for technology, to be able to give the certainty of the protection of online voting, and what that issue, I think, is only growing. Yes, certainly we need to use technology to be able to support a growing community and people where it's harder for people to get out. But it's that security that is the utmost of importance. And I do believe the province will probably have the same response. I also note that they did point out as well the issue of seniors and how it would impact seniors. Although you could look at it both ways. I mean, it would be hard for a senior to get out, as well as maybe possibly for some using a computer technology. Although the speed at which it changes would drive anybody crazy. Mr. Dern's gone now, so I can say that. So I do, I do think the province is making the statement that they support this, and they voted, or, they've said that in all 3 votes that have been passed at the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, but the issues remain the same. They can't find that certainty. And I think that will continue to be a challenge. I think it will grow.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to start out with what Councillor Murray has already said. Security is the big thing that I'm concerned about. There have been security breaches in almost every kind of business: the health services, the government, the financial services, big corporations like Global in Canada and Walmart in Canada, the federal government, and even LifeLab has been hacked to the tune of 15 million users. So I don't think anybody's got a full handle on security right now. So that's my big concern. I don't have confidence in security and our election at our level not being able to be hacked. And as Councillor Murray said, we're already getting all kinds of little phishing things that they want us to click on. But so I think that's only going to continue and get worse. The other thing is that even the federal government requires paper billing by your internet provider or your hydro provider for people 65 and over. And I think that's an important point, that a lot of older generation people still rely on, they were brought up and so they rely on getting a bill in the mail. They rely on maybe having a candidate knock on their door. So I think if we get too into the convenience of electronic voting, we're going to lose that personal touch. And I can't tell you how many people's doors I knocked on and they said, "You're the first political candidate that's ever knocked on my door." So it's important to keep that contact, not just through machinery. So I'm afraid that this could lead to uninformed voting, for those that are familiar of how to get on a computer. It could lead to that. I'm not saying it will. And it also could lead to the lack of real communication and participation between people who are running for elections and the public. So based on this, my security concerns that even big companies can't and governments can't secure themselves, I'm going to vote against this because I don't think we have it worked out enough to be able to go this route. Hopefully someday we will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pope, your comments?
Thank you. I totally support this. I think we have to do whatever we can to try and increase voter engagement. As for the concerns of regarding hacking and such, yes, they are a concern. But I feel that we have to keep the pressure on for the government to find ways to mitigate concerns about hacking. And that's only going to come by keeping the pressure on and renewing this call for online voting. And we have a new Attorney General, and she has had some progress on launching new innovative policies. So in my mind, it's worth another shot.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just my own comments on this. I mean, first of all, it's been a while since we've had an initiative about UBCM come forward, so I figured I'd start with some general comments on it. I generally support every initiative that our council raises because I think you're right to raise these issues at the UBCM. You are members in the UBCM, and you should be able to debate matters of importance to you. And while it may not happen here frequently, there are municipalities where the majority of council actually blocks members of their council from bringing forward initiatives to the UBCM. And I think that's a tragedy. I think that if you got elected, you have a mandate. I think if you want to raise issues of import, you should be permitted to do so. So I encourage and support all members of our council in these kinds of initiatives. Specific to this legislation here, I mean, while you can definitely have some challenges with online elections because it's very hard to go back and verify things. And I think about that absolutely crazy election in the wonderful City of the Arts, Port Moody in 2022, where there was just a too close to call election occurring in that community. And ultimately it came down to the judge saying, you need to look in that bucket, and that bucket, recount them and verify the numbers. And if it was an online one, who knows who they would have been stuck with on their council, because you never know what would have changed in the results. And so while I do support generally online voting, I see the communities that have adopted it though, they're really using it to try to overcome very disparate communities. So in the north, in rural areas, I still think the pressure needs to be on us to provide in-person opportunities for people to come out and vote as well. I don't have an issue with online voting. I think that if you do the security management properly, it can be a valuable tool. But it is true, when you have a dispute, it's the paper ballots that they're going to run the dispute based on, not the online voting, because that is considered to be fully accurately entered in. And so, I hope that people feel welcome to come out in person and vote in person, and we make it easier for them to vote in person. But that doesn't alleviate us of the obligation of making it as accessible as we reasonably can. I'll be supportive of this initiative, and hopefully the executive won't block it just simply because it's been considered time and time again. Hopefully they will welcome it as a renewed energy in something that had been voted on previously. But I see no further speakers on the matter. Oh, Councillor Forbes, your comments?
You just reminded me, I also meant to bring up the infamous 2022 district election where it crashed. And
the website crashed,
yes,
that's correct.
Yeah, the web crashed and it didn't, everybody was screaming, what happened? So sometimes that just electronic system gets people worried and upset.
I think that was about 30 people just hitting refresh constantly was enough to kill the website on that one, but fair point, absolutely, thank you. I see no further speakers on the matter, prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much. Sorry to have a little fun at your expense, Mr. Stewart, on that one. Landslide, Dave Landslide Stewart there, yeah. Okay, so council, we still have a little bit of time. I did just want to make a couple of quick reports. One, this week had a great opportunity to do what's called YPI, the Youth Philanthropy Initiative. And what it is every year, foundations and donors put together funds for up to $5,000 to student initiatives. And so what happens is Argyle, as an example, hosts this YPI, and their students go through and create presentations on different nonprofit organizations in the District of North Vancouver, and they compete in an internal process to see who presents it the best, who's done the best research. It's done and it's judged. A panel of judges participate in it and pick the best project, with the ultimate result of $5,000 being donated to a nonprofit organization. So it has real material benefits to an organization in the community. I've served as a judge on the panels for about 5 or 6 times, I want to say, with typically other representatives from the school district and sometimes student representatives. It's a great opportunity to learn about our nonprofit organizations. This year, the winner was the North Shore Women's Center. Leah made a great presentation on that project and identified all the good work that they're doing in this community. And so they will be granted $5,000 to carry on their programming in our community as a part of that. And I just want to say, you know, Sean Soper, one of the teachers at Argyle, does all the extra legwork to make this happen. And I just wanted to tip my hat to him for literally tens of thousands of dollars in donations that he's been able to create through this initiative and direct into North Vancouver charities. Because Sean does the extra legwork as a teacher to support the students to put these projects forward. And obviously I want to recognize the effort of the students as well, putting in their final projects. But I did just want to pass on to the council that was kind of a fun thing I got to participate in this week. Another thing I just wanted to highlight, it's just a concern. It's a long time lead up concern. And the concern is that our snowpack is at about 30% of where it should be at this time of year. And so what I think we need to expect and plan on is that Metro Vancouver is probably going to move to earlier water restrictions than we normally would have. So normally sometime in May, we would have restrictions come in place to manage level 1 sprinkling restrictions. I just want to put it out there at 30% of the snowpack, that's extremely concerning. And so I would expect that we will probably be in water restrictions earlier in the year than we normally would see. And so I just wanted to put that out there. It's definitely a concern for us because we've had years where we've gone deep into the fall before we've had significant rainfall events to help restore our water supplies. And at 30%, that's where it hits because you don't have that slowly melting snow over the course of the summer feeding the reservoirs for the later part of the series, later part of the season. And so that's a concern I just wanted to pass on. I see a few other hands here. Councillor Hanson, you have a report to make?
Yeah, thank you very much. We did want to report that on February the 1st, last Thursday, I attended the Indigenous Relations Committee of Metro Vancouver, committee in which I've sat now for 10 years. We received a presentation from Celeste Haldane, who's the BC Treaty Commissioner. Of interest is that there's 30 ongoing active negotiations with First Nations across the province. 8 have been completed to this point over the last 30 years, approximately. But significantly, 4 are nearing completion this year. Most significantly, I suppose, though, for our point of view, there are no North Shore First Nations actively engaging in the treaty process. So that's something as a community we want to keep an eye on, because if either of the North Shore First Nations get serious about their treaty negotiations, that would certainly have an impact, but they're not at the moment. Final point, there was some discussion about translated acknowledgements. We have our meeting acknowledgements. but we could up our game for those who have a linguistic bent. There is discussion of encouraging acknowledgements either in the Squamish language or in the Hokomelem. In our case, it would be the Lower River Hokomelem language. And we could consider adding to our land acknowledgement a phrase perhaps in one of those two languages, which would not only be a step towards reconciliation, but would be a gift to our linguistic agility at the same time. So just a thought.
I'll come to you. Thank you very much. Next report I have is Councillor Back.
Thank you very much. I just, when we were talking about the core funding tonight, it and the different organizations who benefit and do such incredible work in our community. I was reminded of last week when I had the opportunity to go on a ride along with a group called the Immigrant Link Center Society, and they're a nonprofit organization who does food recovery. So I joined our colleague and the city councillor, Tony Valente, who introduced me to the organization, and we did a ride along to 5 separate grocery stores in the district, where this organization and their volunteer drivers pick up food that would otherwise not be able to be sold. It's either, mostly it's just close to being reaching its best before date. So the issue of food waste is a huge one, and organizations like this are just doing such important work. From there, from the 5 stores, we then went to the organizations that benefit from it. So Silver Harbor Senior Center was one of them, North Shore Neighborhood House, as was the North Shore Women's Center. And just going back to how these organizations really stretch their budgets with this donated food, they're able to run their food bank in the case of North Shore Neighborhood House, or cook meals for seniors at Silver Harbor. So I'm going to have this organization come and hopefully present as a delegation at some time, just to give us a little bit of an insight into what they do. But it was great to get some firsthand experience and see this issue of food waste, firsthand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Murray, you have a report?
Thank you, Mayor Little. Many of us attended the Council of Council meeting on the weekend, on Saturday. It was being held and hosted by the municipality of Surrey. It was informative to discuss and to hear presentations from Metro Vancouver in regards to the recent changes to legislation on housing and land in the region. And Minister Ravi Kahlon was there also to present from the perspective of the province. And secondly, I did send an email to council, but I just really wanted to, again, bring attention to the issues of the recent decision in regards to the Squamish Nation and Mosquito Creek, and the impact, the loss of Mosquito Creek Marina, and the impact it's having on boat owners. This is also happening up on the coast and up towards Pedro Harbor, and there are probably other areas that we need to understand that impact. We've had a significant deficit over decades on this coast in regards to marinas and slips. And right now we're going to have a number that boats are up for sale, but there's no buyers, I think, because there's no place to put them. And I think we just need to understand with our bylaw, some of the options that people have. I don't think there are any options. And I think we're just going to have to be aware of that going forward, and may have to, discuss how we address that. Because I think a lot of people are, I've talked to several who are trying to sell their boats, but it's just not happening. So it's something that I think we really need to look at. Thank you.
Okay. All right, council, thank you very much. We've completed the business of this evening's meeting. I'll accept adjournment. Thank you very much. I accept. First of all, I wanted to say thank you very much to our staff for preparing the reports for our consideration. Thank you to members of the public for participating in this evening's meeting. And thank you, council, for your deliberations on these matters. Everybody have a fantastic night. Good night.